terminals, the space terminology of Teradata is pump space, spool space, and the temp space. These are three types of space terminology what generally we use. So let us see what all these spaces and what is the relation between these spaces, how this space impact our applications. All those things we'll see now. The first space is called as the pump space or the permanent space. When I say permanent space, the space is used to hold the data of the application permanently. So what all the objects generally store the data? Here we have so many objects which you can create in database. So let us go one by one and see what all objects would store the data. If I have a table, can table store some data? Can hold it? Yes, tables can hold the data. How about the views? Can views hold any data? No. Right? How about store procedures? Store procedures don't hold the data, but yes, the definition of the store procedure, the compilation object code has to be stored somewhere. That the store procedure is also equivalent to storing of the data, because we have to compile the store procedure and the compiled object code of stored procedures we have to store somewhere. That is also occupied with the permanent space. Okay. And when you create an index, when I say index, by default it is secondary index, isn't it, in Teradata? So when I create an index, secondary index or join index, whatever it is, would that occupy some space to get a subtable to be created and the subtable related data to be stored? It has to occupy some space, right? So the tables, indices, and the stored procedures, these are the general objects which hold some space for their existence, right? So the space occupied by these objects permanently is called as the permanent space or the perm space, right? Okay, so you have some space allocated for your user ID so that you can create some tables, indices, and procedures, whatever. So these are the only objects which would occupy some space in your user allocated permanent space, right? Coming to the next space is called as the spool space. What is spool space? It is a workspace used to hold the intermediary answer sets. Okay. So it is a workspace which would hold data for some time during your transformation. Okay. Intermediately, whatever transformation or the format changes, whatever you want to do, you can do on this workspace. And once the answer set is made as per your requirement, it will be given to the user and this workspace is flushed off again. Okay. So the temporary workspace which is used to hold the data for formatting, for orderings, or for temporary purpose, and it will be flushed off whenever the data is given back to the user as per the requirement. It won't hold the data for a permanent purpose. It is for work purpose. It's an intermediary purpose, right? And what is the relation between this pump space and this spool space? Whatever pump space is not being used currently is used as the spool space. For example, if I give you 10 GB of permanent space for your user ID, so you can go and create up to 10 GB of tables, indices, stored procedures, but you may not be using 10 GB right now, right? You might have created a table of 2 GB worth data. I have allocated you 8 GB but you are currently using only 2 GB. Then the 8 GB which is remaining, which is not being used currently, can be used as your spool space. That is the relation between the pump space and the spool space. You can see the example here in these diagrams. From at a point of time on the Teradata server, we have occupied only 1/4 of pump space, so the 3/4 of space available as your spool space. Okay, so for example, if I have two tables here, employee and DEPT, which are stored in the permanent space, and when I'm trying to access this employee table and DEPT table with a query, select query, okay, along with a join or with some conditions, some ordering, some group bys, whatever. So what happens? The query, the select query, whatever you execute on these tables will occupy the spool space in order to execute your SQL in your required format. Okay, so it will join the employee table and DEPT table. It will put it all the things in the spool space, and then it will apply all the conditions, all the groups, all the orderings. And once all the spool space which is required to give you the result set is prepared, the answer set is given back to you and the spool space is released again. Right? So spool space existence also to be important. Right? So after some point of time, after 1 year or 2 years, you start using more pump space because you are continuously loading the data. So the pump space what you are currently using is increased. So obviously the spool space which exists for you is decreased. Okay. After some more years, if you start using 50% of the pump space, you are end up with only 50% of the spool space available for you. Okay, so whatever pump space which you are not currently using is used as the spool space. Okay, this is the relation between the pump and spool space. The pump space is to hold the data for permanent purpose. The spool space is for an intermediary purpose which won't hold permanently. For only the transformation purpose it holds the data, and once the transformations are applied, it will release the data. It will give the data back and release the space. So it is a shareable resource. The spool is a shareable resource. Okay, the pump space is allocated, okay, permanently allocated space. Okay, so that is the pump space and the spool space, the relation and the usage. And coming to temp space, it is a special space which is used to create only the global temporary tables. Okay, so we have to know what is a global temporary table, and whenever you create a global temporary table for some purpose, then the space used would be the temp space. Okay, so it is a special allocation what the DB has to give to you, your user ID, at the time of your user creation. What is the pump space this user should get, what is the spool space this particular user can use, and what is the temp space the user can use. All these factors are allocated at the time of your user creation by the database administrator. Okay, we will see this later, the temp space and the global temporary. Once you complete the global temporary table, then automatically you will know what is the temp space. But for now, let us concentrate on the pump space and the spool space. Pump space is to hold the data permanently. Spool space is to hold the data for a temporary purpose. Okay. And then we'll see how the space distributions in terms of pump space, in terms of spool space. Okay. So we have the DBC, which is the database catalog, the metadata, the super user of your Teradata server. Right? So when you purchase a Teradata server, it will come along with the DBC, the default super user and some default databases also as childs of DBC. Okay, so whatever space you purchase, for example, if you purchase 100 terabytes of Teradata server, they will give you DBC with 100 terabytes of space initially. Okay, when you purchase the Teradata server, the Teradata Corporation will come and configure Teradata on your organization, and they will give you the DBC super user, which would have the space what you purchased. Maybe 10% of the data is used for the system purpose, for system tables. The rest 90% of space is available at DBC. And whenever, as an application DBA, you start creating the databases, the application related databases, you will get some space allocated from DBC to the application databases. For example, I have created SSDBA by pulling 500 GB from the super user DBC. Okay. And from SysDBA, if I want to create an HR application database as a child of SysDBA, so how much space I need? 200 GB. From where I pull it? From SysDBA, I pulled 200 GB of space and created an HR database for HR application. So it is a permanent allocation. SysDBA got 500 GB permanent, and by being child of SysDBA, HR got 200 GB. So it is deducted from its parent directly. So total always it is 500 GB. As HR being child, it has pulled 200 GB as permanent space. And from HR, if you want to create one more child database like payroll, you can create it by pulling some space from the parent. If it is HR, from HR, if I pull 100 GB, so permanently the 100 GB is allocated to payroll. So at any point of time, the total is same, right? At this SDBA, if you combine all the hierarchy, it is always 500 GB. It's not increased, decreased, but it is permanently allocated as per the hierarchy. Right? So this is how the perm space distribution would happen. Okay. Coming to the spool space, here you see, you have the super user DBC. I have created a SysDBA with 500 GB, right? And then I have created a child called A from SysDBA, and I can allocate up to 500 GB as its spool space. What is a spool space? It is a temporary and it is intermediary workspace which can be used at that point of time if it is available. Right? So at SysDBA also we have 500 GB. If pump space is already occupied, then I may not be using 500 GB, right? Out of this 500 GB, if SysDBA has some tables worth of 100 GB, there exists only 400 GB of spool available at SysDBA. So how he can give 500 GB of spool to its child? As he can give, what is the meaning of giving up to 500 GB even it won't have here at SysDBA is, it is a maximum limit what he can use. It doesn't mean that if I give 500 GB, you can always use 500 GB, right? Because spool space is the shareable resource. It all depends on the current situation. It's not like a permanent space. What I have given, you can use up to that at any point of time you want. No. Spool space is a shareable resource. What we can give here is the upper limit you can use in case if it is available at that moment. Okay? So even SysDBA has 500 GB of total pump space and 100 GB is already occupied by its permanent data. Still we can specify that A can use up to 500 GB of spool. But is it really available? No. But it is the upper limit what we have specified at the user creation. Okay. Coming to the B, which is child of A. At the time of B creation also I can mention B can use maximum up to 500 GB of spool if it is available. For C also I can mention that maximum 500 GB what he can use, but it doesn't mean that yes he always can use this. It is all depends on the current situation. Okay, what is the permanent space which was already occupied, and what are the users who already logged in and executing their queries and occupying some spool space for their purpose. Everything counts. Now for example, in this context of A, B, C being 3 users and everyone has 500 GB of spool. Now let us find out. The SysDB has occupied 100 GB of permanent space and only 400 GB is available. Okay, and then A has logged in currently. No other user logged in. How much spool space he can use? Can you tell me? SysDB has total 500 GB. 100 GB is occupied as permanent space for tables, indices and stored procedures. 400 GB is available as spool space. At that moment, A has logged in. Okay, only A has logged in. No other user logged in. How much spool space is available for A at this moment? Very good. It is 400 GB. And A has executed a query, and that particular query is occupying 100 GB. The current query, the SQL or report, is occupying 100 GB of spool space, and at this moment the user B has logged in, who has a maximum limit of 500 GB again. But for B, how much space is available as a spool? Very good. It is 300 GB which is available. You don't say the maximum limit. It's not 500. It is the maximum limit. 500 is the maximum limit, what I'm saying. But at this context, when SysDB has occupied 100 GB of space as pump space and A has occupied 100 GB of spool space, so what is available when B joins or B logins? It is only 300 GB, right? And for example, B has executed a report or a query and he is occupying the whole 300 GB available space. And at this moment, where SysDB occupied 100 GB as pump space, A has occupied 100 GB as spool space, and B has occupied 300 GB as its spool space, and at this moment, C has logged in. So how much spool space he can use at this moment, this context? Very good. It is 0 because all the other users have already logged in and using the available spool space for their purpose, and when the new users log in, there is no spool space available. So at this moment, whatever query he execute, what error he would get? There is no spool space in the current user. Yeah. After some time, if B has completed his report and the spool space, the 300 GB spool space is released, and at that moment if C logs in, how much space available for C? 300 GB, isn't it? So that is how the spool space behavior would happen. So sometimes you may not get spool space available for your user ID because it all depends on the multi-user environment, how many users have logged in at that particular moment and executing their queries, right? And after some time, if some users have released their space, you may get this space. This is what happens. Generally, if you are already working on Teradata servers, you might have observed this. Okay, during business hours, you will get very less space, and during non-business hours, you will get very huge space and huge resources so that you can complete all the complex calculations very fast. You might have observed this because of this reason of the maximum limit and the current available spool space by the users. But how about permanent space? When I give it to the child, it can be used by the child at any point of time. There is no restriction. There is no sharing of the space here in terms of pump space, but here the spool space, it is all the shareable resource. which can be used by the whole users in the hierarchy at that particular moment of time if it is available, right? And there are three measures or three metrics how you measure these spaces. Let us consider the pump space. To measure the pump space, there are three metrics. The first one is called as the maximum pump space. Second one is current pump space. Third one is the peak pump space. So what is the maximum pump? The allocated permanent space for the user is called as maximum pump. For example, if I have given you 500 GB of space for your permanent usage, then the allocated 500 GB is called as a maximum pump on the user. Even I give 500 GB, you are using only 100 GB currently. So that space which is currently being used is called as the current pump space. Okay. And at one particular moment of time, you have occupied up to 500 GB or 250 GB, for example. You have already occupied up to 250 GB at some particular point of time, because during execution of a batch process or something, some application process, we have created some temporary tables, we populated data, and after processing, we have dropped all those temporary tables, the intermediary tables, what you have used for our application purpose. Then the usage will come back to your current pump space, but at one particular moment of time, you have occupied up to 250 GB. Then this 250 GB, which was occupied at one point of time as a peak usage, is called as a peak pump. The peak usage of this particular user at one particular moment of time is called as the peak usage of the pump space, that is a peak pump. And so these are the three metrics what we have to find out to do space estimations. So maximum pump is the allocated pump space. The current pump is the currently occupied pump space. The peak is at one particular moment of time what was your peak usage of the database. Okay, it was used, and after dropping off some tables or after archival of the data, the usage may come down again to 100 GB, or it could be 150 GB, whatever it is. But whatever the peak usage you did at one particular moment of time is called as the peak pump space. Okay. And in this context, how we can ensure our application is going smooth in terms of space? Yeah. So here, one factor what we can see is the difference between the max pump and the peak pump. So it is a hint that yes, at any particular moment you may go ahead and use this much of space at any particular time. Right? So we have to have this much of space available. So it is always better you measure the difference between max pump and the peak pump, and it should be always more than a specified threshold, like 50 GB difference should be there in between max and pump space. Then you can estimate that the application goes smooth in near future. Otherwise you start loading all the data and at particular moment of time peak come here, for example, then what is the risk? You start loading the data, every time the peak is also increasing. So at one particular moment the peak almost come over to 490 GB. Then what is the risk? Next day you may hit with no room in your database. So your application will halt. If you don't have any space to process the data during your batch process, you will get into risk, right? So we have to observe proactively what is the space available for the application by giving the measurement max pump minus peak pump. There are some data dictionary tables which you can query and get these space details. What is the maximum pump space allocated for this database? What is the current peak? What is the current space occupied? What is the difference between these two? What is the percentage of usage? everything can derive and calculate, and you can monitor it proactively every weekly basis or daily basis based on your load frequency, and take decisions of forecasting of space. This is generally the DBA activity, but it's good as an application developer if you have this basic knowledge of the space so that you can communicate with the DBAs very perfectly. Okay, we'll see with data dictionaries and the measurements and the database administrator tool how we can see the space details in the DBA topics. But here, as an application developer, a basic knowledge of maximum POM, current POM, and peak POM would help you to communicate confidently with the DBAs. That's where I have added here as a common topic. Okay. And this space terminology is same for the spool space also. Maximum spool allocated, current spool what you are using for your currently executing SQLs, and peak spool at one point of time what is the peak spool you have used for your query executions. So here also the same strategy works. What is the difference between max spool and peak spool? If it is under control, your application will go smooth in near future. Similarly, the max temp, current temp, and the peak temp. You will get to know what is the temp space, but the measurement is same. What is the space allocated as temp space for this user? What is it currently used, and what is the peak usage? The difference between max and peak would always give you a factor, the risk factor, how soon you are going to hit with the space issue. So proactively you can monitor it and do the space forecasting. And here you can see while creation of the user how we are generally giving the POM space and spool space for the users. Here we have the payroll database. We have a maximum POM space of 25 MB and maximum spool is allocated of 50 MB. Can it be like this? POM is 25, spool could be 50. Is it possible? Yes, it is always possible because the POM space is allocated and can be used at any point of time for payroll. This is the maximum limit what we are specifying, right? So if it is available, yes, he can use it, or if it is not available, he cannot use it. At the parent level, payroll parent level, there may exist more than 50 GB also, but they have given a limit of 50 GB here for payroll. So if you want, he can use it if it is available. Conditions apply, right? At the spool space, as it is a shareable resource, conditions apply. At this context, if 50 GB available, yes, he can go and use up to 50 GB. But as part of POM space, you can use only 25 GB. So it is always possible to have spool space more than your POM space. Where the shareable resource, the parent's spool also you can use if it is available. Right? And then I am creating a child page 01 from payroll with some password, and I'm giving POM space of 6 MB, and I'm limiting the spool space to 35 GB. The POM is 6 MB, spool is 35 MB. I'm allocating to the page 01. And I have one more child what I'm going to create, that is page 02 with POM space of 4 MB, but I did not mention any spool space here at the time of the creation. Then what does it mean if I don't give anything? It means the current parent spool space is given by default as its limit. What is the parent? The payroll. What is the payroll spool space limit? 50. So if I don't give anything, the spool limit of this page 02 is 50 MB. Okay. So I have the payroll with 25 MB initially, but I have created two childs, page 01 and page 02, with 6 MB and 4 MB correspondingly. Then how much pump space is available at payroll now? 25 minus 6 plus 4, it is 15 MB. How much pool space is available at the parent now after giving a maximum limit of 35 for page 01 and max limit of 50 MB for page 02? What is left at payroll? Can you tell me? This still 50 MB. Even we have given a maximum limit to the child as 50 MB, we are not losing anything at the parent level. It is still there. It is a shareable resource. But in terms of pump space, yes, it is deducted. But in terms of spool space, it is not deducted. Right? Even we have two childs which are having 35 MB and 50 MB spool space allocated as a maximum limit, we are not losing anything at the parent level. But in terms of permanent space, yes, it is being deducted directly from the parent for the existence of their childs. Okay, now after some time I have dropped the child page 02. Then what happens? The pump space is given back to the immediate parent. So the 4 MB which was allocated to page 02 for its creation was given back to the payroll. So now how much pump space is available at payroll after giving back 4 MB? 15 plus 4, that is 19 MB. How about the spool space? Does it increase? No, this will remain same. Even one is created, even one is dropped, the spool space not interrupted. It is always 50 GB. But how about pump space? If it is created, the child is created, it is deducted. If the child is dropped, it is given back to or added to the immediate parent's pump space. Okay, so this is how the pump space and spool space would work at the user level or database levels. Let me see if you have any questions. Any questions? Anyone? So far? Yes, Kiran.
So very first time, so when we have the DBC, the catalog database, where do we get, like, do we define DBC with the spool? Because, so payroll,
Not
page
able to hear
01,
you.
page 02, hello?
What happened to your mic?
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Otherwise you can type your question.
Hello? Hello?
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone? Kiran, please type your question. I'm not able to hear you for some reason. Okay. How do we define spool at the DBC level? DBC level, we don't define the spool. Whatever pump space you purchase from the Teradata Corporation, that is exists as the maximum limit of spool at the DBC. Okay. For example, if you purchase 100 terabytes of space from Teradata Corporation, the DBC would have that 100 terabytes allocated as pump space, and whatever its corresponding child's use, that is deducted, and the remaining space can be used as spool space of the DBC always. There is no limit at the DBC. But whenever you create childs of DBC, yes, you can limit it to a maximum factor. Okay, here I see one more question. Cannot spool space hold global temporary tables? No. A global temporary table space is different. That is called as a temp space. The spool space is not being used for the purpose of holding temp tables, the global temporary tables. Okay, that is the other topic what we are going to have as a recording for this weekend, that is called as tables. Okay, you may complete the tables video also so that you can find out what types of tables exist and what type of table would occupy what type of space. You have derived tables, volatile tables, and global temporary. You will see that recording with practicals. You can understand what type of tables and which table occupies what type of space. Right. And I see one more question. Will the unused perm be used as spool above the maximum allocated spool space? For example, max perm is 50 MB and max spool is 50. Used perm is only 30. Will utilized spool be 50 or 70 MB? The maximum limit what we have given is 50. So yes, it can go and use up to 50 if it is available in the entire hierarchy. It cannot go beyond the limit what you have specified as a maximum. So it cannot go up to 70. It can go up to 50 if it is available in the entire hierarchy. Right, Harish? So maximum limit we cannot go beyond at any time. So here also in this context, if you see, have allocated it 35. But if no users have logged in this hierarchy, for example, payroll not logged in and page 02 not logged in, if page 01 only alone logged in, 50 spool is available, but as you have limited it to 35, he cannot use up to 50, but he can go up to 35 only, as it was the limit specified at the user creation. So it is a best practice. Whenever a user is being created by the DBA, they will analyze what is the usage purpose and they will allocate some spool space for you as a maximum, so that if you execute any bad query, you should not go and occupy the whole spool space, so that which would stop all other users to execute their queries. So it is best practice to limit every user based on their usage and based on their data worth what they use in their applications. So they should not go beyond that particular limits. Right. Yes, Kiran. Type the question. I am not able to hear you. I think your mic is not set up. Or let me change my things. Yeah, Kiran. I think now I can hear you. Where are you? Yeah, Kiran, go ahead please now.
Can you hear me?
Right. I am able to hear you. It is my problem. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. So again, my first question, so say in the beginning when we have the whole Teradata configuration, so we have the catalog database DBC. So at that, we say we buy 100 terabyte. So the 100 terabyte is the total which will be used by either, like it will be used by the permanent plus spool. Is that right statement?
But it can be used for the whole permanent purpose. Yes.
No. The question is the 100 terabyte would be used by permanent plus spool. There would be nothing else because what you're saying is spool is basically the unused area of permanent. So if it was 100 could be permanent, but in the beginning, if I have a 10 terabyte as used as a permanent, then the 90 terabyte would be used as a spool at the DBC level.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So you have to use the terminology current POM. And then otherwise it may not be a good communication. So you have to use the maximum minus current can be used as your spool space.
Okay. So there is directly we never define the max spool is always the top level, which is DBC.
Right. At the DBC level, we generally don't do that. Yep.
Okay.
But when you are the DBA and when you are start creating the databases for the applications or the users, then you will allocate a limits. This application can go up to this particular permanent space and this particular spool space. You can do that.
But you can never define the maximum spool higher than what is available at the DBC level because that would be a problem.
Right. That is there. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Indrajit, this does not involve RAM. No, this does not involve the RAM. Okay. So here the concept of the disk is always the virtual disks. Okay. We have to remember that this virtual disk concept is always gets space from the actual hard disks. So it is internally maintained as the virtual storages. So we don't involve the RAM part. but RAM still exists at the hardware part, but we have to deal with the virtual storage, virtual disk part.
This is all the primary memory you're talking about, right?
Right.
Okay.
So
This is
here
not
there is no concept of hard disk and RAM. Yes, so everything we deal with virtual disk. So no need to think about what the RAM space we are using and cache space and all. That is all virtual disk space. The pump space and spool space, whatever we are talking about, is on the virtual disks what we have in the configuration.
Oh, so no primary, no secondary basically.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? Anyone? Okay, so what I'm going to give you the time for installation of Teradata on your machines and the backups of the data protection techniques, and I'm going to add one more video for you for the tables. So these are the action items for you for this week, where we have 3 days of holidays, and from Monday onwards we'll start with the SQL part. Any questions, anyone? You are going to get the email with the reminders. You get this. Okay. Harish, your question is, can we install Teradata on Windows 7 machine? Yes, we can install it, but you have to install VMware Player, and then on VMware Player you have to install Windows XP Service Pack 3, and then you have to install Teradata. Have you gone through the installation guide? Please download the installation guide onto your local machine. Then you will get all the links visible, and you can follow that instructions one by one. It is there in your Google Drive. Once you get access to the Google Drive, in the startup kit, you see the Teradata installation on VM XP Service Pack 3. So this guide will help you what all components you have to download and how to configure it. So all 32-bit operating systems are compatible. If it is a 64-bit operating system, you have to go through the whole process of downloading XP Service Pack 3 software and VMware Player, and configure VMware Player with these instructions. And then in Teradata forums, you enroll for it and download the Teradata 13 software and install the Teradata 13 on Windows XP Service Pack 3 guest machine you installed on VMware Player. The whole process is given as snapshots here in the installation guide. Please follow this and complete it. Okay. Okay. So here I see one more question, Indrajit. How to download XP software? Okay. So just go through here. You download this document first of all onto your local machine. Then all these links are visible as hyperlinks. Okay. So once you install torrents, then go for XP Service Pack 3. Let me just give you a hint. Okay, so tomorrow is holiday and Saturday, Sunday is holiday. Please complete your action items and be prepared for Monday sessions where we start on SQL part. Okay, so this is the Windows XP download link, and click on this get this torrent. This is the link where you have to try this. So before this we have installed the uTorrents, the device, the download manager, and when you click on this get this torrent, through the download manager, it will start downloading the Windows XP Service Pack 3 operating system. Okay. Right. Yeah. Please try this and post me your questions if you have any. And please try to complete the action items. I'm going to send you the email with all reminders on the outstanding action items. If you complete them, it's fine. Otherwise, if you not completed them, please complete them during this long weekend, the 3 days. Right. So thank you very much, everyone. We'll see again on Monday through the live session. And those who wanted to enroll for the course, Please complete your enrollments by contacting the corresponding spots with whom you are in touch with. And from Monday onwards, we'll go with the regular sessions on SQL part to the same link. Okay. Thank you very much. See you all. Bye.